So, first thing, just real quick, give me a little background on Mighty Rabbit Studios.
So when I was graduating from college, I was looking to get into games. I had worked a little bit at Epic Games as a tester while I was in college, but while I was there, I was doing pretty hardcore crunch, and I didn't have any time to really interact with family, friends, anybody like that. So I kind of had seen how hard the game industry can be. So I wanted to kind of go off and do my own thing and start my own thing. So fresh out of college, I found some funding, thankfully, because there was this weird incubator program starting that was recklessly giving indie developers money. I pitched them an idea and they gave us 20 grand to start our company. So started it and rolled since then. So it's been about 5 years now.
And who here are the founding members?
Just me.
Just you.
The
Okay.
the other people that I founded with, the first two people I founded with it dropped out. One of them left immediately. The other one was a close friend that didn't actually have any of the skills that fit what I needed for the company. So I had to let him go, and that was really hard, and I haven't really spoken to him since. So that's been kind of harrowing to say the least. But after that, I found another person to come on as a founding member, and then he had to leave after our first game kind of bombed financially. Like, we had reviewed well, we got so much press coverage. We thought the game was going to do insanely well. It didn't. And then he had to drop back and get a real job because he had his mortgage to pay and everything like that. And
But you've managed to stay around till today, so what has led to
we
you still existing?
yeah. We thankfully we've been able to keep existing because we found contract work after our first game bombed. We found a client in Lexington, Kentucky that was looking to build a game called Breach and Clear, which was a strategy turn-based military game that they wanted to put out on mobile phones. They were looking for a developer to team up with to build a demo for the game. And we originally pitched them on just doing this demo for X amount of money, and we ended up building them the full game for that amount of money, which was kind of crazy in hindsight, but we went above and beyond to do it to continue to thrive, stay in business, do good work for them. Game ended up being really successful. Breach and Clear was the #1 strategy game in, I think, like 40 different countries on the iOS App Store when it came out. It actually made it to like the #2 top app in the App Store in the United States, which was insane. So it made them a lot of money. We had no revenue share on it. We got paid what we got paid to make it, but they came back to us for more work, and that allowed us to keep doing things and to stay in business.
So obviously something somewhere along the lines led to you deciding, hey, we're going to get into publishing.
Yes.
What were the early conversations like that led to that?
So after Breach and Clear came out, we moved on to the next game, which was Breach and Clear Deadline, which was kind of a spin-off of Breach and Clear. And we worked with 3 different publishers on it and our client. So there was like 4 people telling us what the game needed to be. It's a really messy development. And when it ended, nobody wanted to keep putting money into the game. And the client had already moved on to working on their next game while we were still working on that one. So they weren't working with us on that one. We were left with no work, no money, and we were about to have to close our doors. We were about 1 month out from closing our doors. And I had to think, like, what can we do? What crazy thing can we do right now to keep making money and to stay in business? We had just put Breach and Clear out on the PlayStation Vita.
And this was about when?
In May 2000, I guess that was 2015. May 2015 is when that came out on digital PSN. And this crisis, this deciding point when I had to like figure out what we were going to do with our last month's worth of money was in July 2015, like right after E3, because I remember making all of my employees very panicked by saying, we're going out of business, start lining up another job. Like, I'm doing a Hail Mary. I'm printing 1,500 copies of Breach and Clear on cartridge for PlayStation Vita with the last money that we have. I didn't know if it was going to do well. I didn't know if it was going to sell out or if people would care, because honestly, the game hadn't sold very well on Vita. Since it had come out in May, it had barely sold 2,000 copies digitally. And
so
that was like...
This was after you had already
done the digital release.
Right, and you were putting together a physical release. You had already come up with limited run games, and you were talking publicly about it at this point.
No, we didn't say anything public about it until much later.
The
Because
physical breach and
I was trying
clears
to,
were
yeah,
already out.
we had gotten them in our hands by the time we started talking about it. In order to get past that month in July, I ended up just convincing myself that this was going to succeed. And I took a really bad loan out. Like, I got a loan from like lendingclub.com or whatever. They give everybody loans. They have huge fees on them, ridiculous interest rates. Like, it's just stupid to take a loan from them, but they'll give you a loan if your credit's decent enough. So I got a loan from them to cover the next few months of payroll to get us through releasing this. And I used the last real money that we had to print Breach and Clear with Sony to do those 1,500 copies. And I figured if they don't sell, I'll figure out how to get that loan paid off eventually. And we'll just go from there. We'll probably close the doors down and I'll figure out how to pay that loan off. And actually, it was a corporate loan, so I probably wouldn't have had to figure out how to pay it off. I just would have closed the doors down and probably lost my credit rating for forever. But in any case, I was going to find a way to do it if it wasn't successful. We got the games in from Sony in about September of 2015. We were planning to start selling them at the end of October. I think it was October 29th is when we released it. Gave a copy to our good friend Randy Greenback, and he didn't ask if he could tweet about it. He just kind of like got it and took a picture of it with the limited run sticker next to it, and it exploded like a minute after he posted that. Like, our Twitter account that had just been hiding in the background because I'd set it up like August or whatever, and no followers, nothing. It was just
You had the logo and everything.
0-0. The logo was done, everything was ready, and suddenly overnight we had 300 followers, then 400, then 500, then 600, because Randy tweeted a picture of the game, and collectors immediately honed in on it. We're like, this is awesome. I got to get in on this. And I had already decided, like, let me lay the groundwork to putting other people's games out, because if this does work out, I want to immediately jump onto other things. So I approached one developer, and that was Zeboyd Games, about doing a physical release of Cosmic Star Heroine. And he wanted to do it. They were very excited. Bill and Robert, they both were super excited about doing it, which was awesome. So I just crossed my fingers and hoped that Breach and Clear was going to sell out. And it seemed like, because we were getting so many Twitter followers, that we were on the right track to have that happen. We put the game up for sale on the 29th. I was actually at my other job because I thought the company was going to go out of business. I took a job as a teacher at a local community college, and I was working that job. I was doing my office hours at the college when I flipped the switch for it to go on sale, and then I went off to my class. I checked in an hour later after the class, and we had sold out of our initial batch, which was crazy. I think it was like 108 minutes was the total time it took to sell out of all of our stock. So like that first batch was like an hour, and then we canceled a bunch of people because like one guy I think ordered like 300 copies. So we like canceled his order, put those back into the inventory system, and then once we relisted them, like the total time to sell out was 108 minutes, which was insane. So it was like right then we knew this is big.
This is, I think so. Like, when you first put those together, was that kind of just a vanity project or just for fun, or were you foreseeing that as laying the groundwork for, we can reach out to other people and work and publish other people's games?
Well, I figured I was putting the effort into it to do my releases, that I'm learning how to do this. I might as well approach other developers to do it for them, because I've already put in the effort to learn it, and they're not going to want to put in that effort. And the other thing, they're not going to want to put the money down to risk putting one of these things out, because it's a lot of money that you have to pay Sony to actually manufacture the things, and it's upfront. So they've already got money in development. They're already paying their employees. They don't want to tie up another 50 grand in production fees, manufacturing costs. So I figured, I'll take out that aspect of it. I'll pay those. I will do all the work with Sony and make it just as easy as making your game compatible with the format, which is just a couple hours of work. And I figured that's a no-brainer. A lot of developers are going to sign on to work with us on this. And honestly, when Retro City Rampage came out, I thought that, much like a lot of other people, that Fangamer was the one who published it. For just clarity's sake, Fangamer did not publish it. That was VBlank that published the game, and Fangamer distributed. But I had this early inclination that Fangamer was going to go to their other clients, like Young Horses with Octodad, and put out other physical games after that was so wildly successful. I thought this is like this is the next step for Fangamer. They're going to do this. But then like a year had passed. They had put nothing else out. I was like, I can't believe nothing else has come out because that was so popular. How did this not happen? And it turns out it was because Brian Provenciano at VBlank had put all the effort forth. And honestly, your first physical release is a lot of work because you have to meet so many people at Sony. You have to learn so many new websites that it's kind of a hurdle for developers to get past, to do. So I figured I'll take that hurdle away and help developers do it.
So
reduce the boundaries.
So, I mean, in some ways, it almost sounds like an accident you stumbled into this, but in other ways, I mean, you know, you guys are just a small developer. There's lots of small developers. Why did it end up being you guys with this great idea?
I've been collecting games my whole life. For as long as I can remember. Every Nintendo game I've bought, I've kept. And it's really important to me to have game collecting in my life, to have games on a cartridge or on a disc or whatever. I like being able to go back and enjoy the things that I played. And I know that digital games are going to disappear at some point. They're going to be gone. And there's going to be no way to legally play them. You're going to have to go on Pirate Bay. You're going to have to hack or modify your consoles to get these games to run. And I think that's silly. I think that's short-sighted, and I think that's kind of stupid. So I wanted to have my games, first and foremost, the games that I developed at Mighty Rabbit, on discs and cartridges, so they'd have a legacy, so that in 20 years, people would still be able to play my games on PS4 and Vita. So as a developer, it was very important for me to have that. And I figured, just from me being a collector and the fact that I wanted more things like Retro City Rampage, that there was more people like me out there that wanted this stuff. So just from having that insight as a game collector and a developer, I knew there was so many different reasons why this had to exist, why this had to be a thing. And I just didn't think anybody else was realizing that or noticing that, because the popular belief is that physical media is dead. That's what everybody thinks. But then you look at things like vinyl, which I have a few here. Vinyl is back. And that's with all the conveniences we have with streaming music and iTunes and everything. People like physicality.
And, you know, that was so important to you. Was it, you know, when you realized the games that you were working on early on were, you know, these are indie games generally bound for a digital only release, was that a disappointment to you at first?
Well, not necessarily disappointment, because it was all that was available, really. Like, when you set out to do this, like, especially when you're developing your first game, you don't think that it's going to be feasible to have it as a cartridge or a disc. But as somebody who grew up with physical media, that's always been something I've wanted. Ever since I was a kid, I've wanted a game I made to be on a disc in a box, like a real thing. Like, it kind of legitimizes your work. So, like, I wanted that to be a thing. But what really, like, disappointed me is that I feel like digital experiences end up being a bit more expendable. Like, people move on to the next thing and forget about what they played. They just, it's one and done. It's on to the next thing and let's forget about this. So in 20 years, if a game that's digital now doesn't have a physical release, I strongly believe that people are going to forget it. But people are still going to remember the worst games on the NES because they're on cartridge. People are still trading them. They're still collecting them. They're still staying in the public conscious. But if your game is just this digital thing that is going to be pretty hard to play in 20 years, who's going to be talking about it? It's going to be like thousands of DOS games that are hard to play right now. Like, nobody's talking about those games because they've just been kind of thrown away. But when you have something that's on like a PlayStation 4, when you have a working PlayStation 4 in 20 years, that game is still going to work in it. So collectors are always going to remember these things that we're putting out. There's a legacy.
What does it take? What's the, you know, we think of publishers as a big company, but what does it really take to be a publisher of a game, and what is sort of the difference between publishing for a digital medium and a physical medium?
So we're different from most of the publishers out there right now in that A, we don't fund development, and B, we're kind of more of a distributor almost than a publisher. We're doing publishing stuff with Sony in terms of like, we're getting the game certified and ready for manufacturing and on disc and all that stuff. Like, those are publisher responsibilities. But the big thing we're providing to developers is that distribution, because we're actually taking all the trouble that they would have of finding customers, selling the games to them, shipping them out, warehousing them, all of that crap. We're taking that out and we're doing it for them. which kind of like that's the bulk of our work. So it feels like we're more of a distributor like Steam, but we're like a physical Steam kind of in a way. So normal publishers, like the big guys, they're actually putting up hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop games. We're not doing that. We're putting up tens of thousands of dollars to get stuff onto disc, and then getting those discs out to the fans, the collectors, and the developers themselves who want their games on discs. So that's kind of where we've got a dividing line.
So what kind of connections have you developed, and how do you facilitate that process for the other indie developers that you've worked with?
So having already worked with Sony from our development side, Mighty Rabbit, I knew a lot of people there, just my account manager and a few other people that were able to introduce me to the next level of people, the disc operations people. And from disc operations, I was able to meet the other people that I needed to meet to make discs. And from there, I was able to finally manufacture discs. So I was able to leverage connections on the dev side to get into the disc publishing side of Sony.
So, what does Sony do that facilitates that makes this possible at all? And is there any hope of Nintendo and Microsoft support anytime soon?
So the big thing that Sony is allowing us to do that's kind of keeping us on Sony platforms right now is really low minimum order quantities. They're letting us, like sometimes they're letting us pay a very small fee to break their minimum order quantities and go below the minimum order quantities. That's not something that a big company like Microsoft, like Sony's a big company too, but like Microsoft is mired in paperwork and bureaucracy and money, money, money. But Sony's gaming department is more about trying to actually cater to gamers and fans, and they want to be perceived as the fan-friendly console. So they're doing a lot of things that are friendly to the consumer, like allowing small games to go onto a disc. And really, it's a big draw for their developers too, because they can look at the PlayStation platform and say, hey, I can do a disc release and make $100,000 just from that. And it's pretty much guaranteed. So that makes like going to PS4 and Vita a no-brainer for those devs. Whereas on Xbox, they might say, I can only put out a digital release. I'm only going to get 40 grand from that. It's kind of this guarantee on PlayStation. If you work with us and you put it on PlayStation, you're going to make X amount of dollars back no matter what. But Nintendo's kind of similar, high minimum order quantities. It's just kind of like, it doesn't seem like there's anything that's going to move there. And I don't know the right people to talk to, honestly. Like, it's weird. We're going to try to break onto those platforms. We're going to do what we can, but there's only so much we can do if they don't want to go below those minimum order quantities. Because we have to order 10 grand of a small game, there's not a lot of chance that it's going to sell. So we don't want to get stuck with excess inventory.
But I mean, with such collector mentality out there with so many people,
I know people would buy it up. It's just that like that 10 grand number is going to be scary.
That would be, but like at least double or maybe even triple of what you're making now is probably pretty doable.
Yeah, we've got this weird thing though, where if a game stays in stock for more than 24 hours, we start getting a deluge of emails from people asking us to cancel their orders. Because it's not rare anymore if it's in stock for 24 hours or more. But then when it sells out, like we just don't respond to those emails usually, and it'll sell out. And then we'll respond to them like, oh, never mind, I don't want to cancel it anymore. So we're worried that if we have a game that like has a lot of copies, like, yeah, we might be able to sell through those in like a month or 2 months, but we might lose a lot of people who are like compulsively buying because they're like, it's going to sell out. And it's weird. Like, would we actually sell through those? I don't know. It's weird. It's risky for us to assume something that could tie up money for like that long of a period of time. Because what keeps us really, really nimble is the fact that we have these one and done runs that like sell out in a day, and then we can ship it off to the fulfillment center and they get everything out. Now we're on to the next thing. We've got all of our money back from it, and the developers just made a whole bunch of money in a really short frame. And I think that really, really sells us to the developers well, because they know that if they partner with us, get the thing done, they'll get a huge amount of money just in like one quick burst like that. But if we start getting to a point where it's taking a month to sell out, like it becomes a little less appealing. And It's just I don't know if there's like a saturation point. Like we do too many, how many people do we lose? Because if there's a lot of people compulsively buying it, what number causes their brain to shut off and say like, oh, it's not rare? Like, is that 5,000? Is that 10,000? I don't know yet.
That's really interesting. So I can very much see how that appeals to the developers because it's just quick, done process, money. They get money, you get money. Everyone's happy. People get their rare game. Do you think? I mean, from my perspective, I've told you about my background with backlogging, and I'm all about. I have this game. I have to play through to the end.
Yeah.
So you think you're getting a lot of customers who may very well never play the game. They just want to have the collectible. You could be shipping them nothing in the case, and they wouldn't know.
Yeah, it could be bricks, rocks. I don't know. It could be anything. If bricks, they'd probably know, but it could be an empty case. It's not. Don't worry about that. Plenty of people open their games and actually play them. They know that they work, and we do it on stream too, so they see it. But I would feel like it's probably a safe bet to guess that probably more than half of our games end up staying sealed. Because it's just collectors buying to put them up on a shelf. And I'm a sealed collector. I'm one of those weird people. Like just right there, I've got sealed Vita special editions just sitting around, and because I'm one of those weird people that buys a sealed game and just likes to look at a shrink wrapped game for some reason. I don't know why it appeals to me, but it does.
I mean, you are obviously quite a collector, and that's very evident throughout the whole studio, and Douglas as well. I mean, that just seems to be a mentality that is ingrained in you.
Yeah, I'm a hoarder. I collect everything, like computer games, action figures, video games. It's just too much stuff. But I mean, I feel like that's why I understand the market so well, is because like I'm always collecting things. I'm always buying stuff. I know what I want as a collector, and I know that there's other people that want those kind of things. And I feel like that's kind of the thing that a lot of big companies are deaf to, is they don't know what collectors want. And they put out these weird things, like a lot of collector's editions are these big garish statues that are cheaply made and they're $200 or whatever. Like that doesn't appeal to me as a collector. Like I want something like cool, small, that I can put up on my shelf that's like thematically tied to the game. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Do you want to move to the other side just to get a different angle?
I'm afraid if I go over there, like I think that angle is pretty good.
I mean, I was just thinking, like, if you're like cutting between the shots, you're going to be crossing the axis. I mean, it could. Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking if you want some variety.
Right.
Do you think you can get something?
No. This is great.
Okay. Let me get back on track. So this has been a recent trend of this generation. I mean, it's really last generation that digital distribution started to take off as a thing, and indies really became this established force. But physical copies of these games that would normally be digital only, that's new to this generation, and you're a leading force in that realm. But we've seen even companies like Microsoft and Nintendo and Sony release their own smaller games as physical copies. Sometimes it's a surprise, but they did much less of that last generation. It was just announced that Yacht Club is publishing physical copy of
Azure Striker.
Yeah, which is awesome. I already went ahead and pre-ordered it.
Yeah.
And I will play it, I promise.
And the pre-order wasn't even supposed to be up, apparently. Like that pre-order on Amazon was kind of like a fluke. But I got in on that too.
Yeah.
Because they haven't announced the price yet, so like that's why it was kind
$30.
of $30. Yeah, it was, and then with the Prime discount, it was $24. I was like, I'm not gonna pass that up. I'm picking this up one way or the other.
So this has been a new trend to cater to these people who want a physical copy of these games that would normally be digital only. Why do you think this trend has emerged?
People miss physicality. They miss tangibility, and people are starting to slowly realize that digital games can disappear, that there's no permanence to them. They're seeing games getting delisted from Xbox Live. They're seeing games getting removed from PSN and Steam. And they know that at any point, their access to these games that they bought can be revoked. And people are like, it's becoming a growing movement, and people are getting frustrated with that. And they want to own the things that they buy. And the only way to own the thing that you buy is to get it physically.
Do you think that Microsoft's original vision for the Xbox One, obviously that didn't have necessarily to do with eradicating physical media, but it was steps in that direction.
Yeah.
They wanted to control how you can use your physical media. do you think that the very public, very vocal backlash against what the original vision for Xbox One was, do you think that that has sort of moved, started this trend toward moving toward, hey, let's give consumers what they want in terms of how they own and how they use our products?
I think that debacle with the Xbox One kind of like opened a lot of people's eyes to it. I think there was a lot of younger people who kind of digital has been the norm for, that looked at that and saw like, why are people hating on this, and maybe dove a little bit deeper to see why this wasn't such a good plan. And from that, maybe they realized like, hey, maybe physical media is a good thing. And I think that whole thing may have actually played into why Sony is being so friendly with letting this happen, is because they did that whole video with Shuhei Yoshida and Adam Boyes where they slammed Microsoft. Like, that video won this console generation pretty much. And like, I feel like what they're allowing us to do with Limited Run plays into that, because it gives people another level of ownership on PlayStation that they don't have on the other consoles.
Do you think, I mean, I almost feel like, I feel like the backlash against that and Microsoft's reversal was just a huge win in general for game players and game consumers. I feel like that could have extended the life of physical media for generations.
If Microsoft had been successful in rolling out an optical media free console, or even just, you know, when they backtracked and were like, we're putting a disk drive on here, but we've got this stupid license thing that's like every disk is going to get registered to your console, whatever that nonsense was. If that had actually been successful and taken off, that would be bad, because then the other manufacturers would have been able to get in on doing that. Now, who knows if Nintendo or Sony would have actually done that, but had that happened and had we moved one step closer to that scary digital future, I would have been worried as a game consumer, because I feel like, I say this, but I know it won't be the case, that when games go all digital, I'm gonna tap out. I don't think that's not gonna be true. I'm still gonna play games. I know that's gonna be the case, but like, that's how I feel right now. Like, I want my games physical. I don't want people to remove optical media. I know that I'm gonna not support any console. I feel like I'll move to PC at that point, and just become an all PC gamer if consoles start saying like no discs, no cartridges, whatever. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the Microsoft thing set that back another decade at least.
Yeah, and you know, you bring up, you would go all PC, all Steam. That brings up an interesting point that I wanted to bring up. Why is it that, mobile was designed from the ground up, and there basically wouldn't have been a viable way to make that not a digital distribution platform, but PC,
And N-Gage tried that.
it didn't work.
They tried cartridges on a phone.
Talking.
So
Yeah.
So you've got these you've got mobile digital only market. PC gamers have so readily embraced digital distribution. It's like, ooh, I don't even want to bother with a physical copy. Why have those markets embraced digital distribution, and why does consoles still want this physical medium?
I think it's easier to think about playing a PC game in 20 years. Either that, let me reframe this. I think that because PC gamers are kind of used to the constant march of hardware changes, this is speculation. The PC master race might like get mad at me, because like I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but I feel like they're used to their games becoming obsolete a lot faster than console gamers. That maybe that has played into them being able to embrace digital more. One of the things that happened last week is IndieBox, one of the other companies doing kind of what we're doing. They announced that they were switching from using USB drives in their box, which I didn't really like that much, to using discs, which I think is really cool, CDs. But look at the comments on the YouTube video where they announced that. It's just like people getting angry, like, discs? How could you put a disc in here? I don't even have a disc drive anymore. Like, I just want this on that digital format. You know, I want it on a USB stick because I'm not going to get a CD drive for my computer. Like, I want them to be on a disc. Like, for me, for some reason, like a disc, like, feels more permanent. Maybe it's not, but it feels more permanent to me.
do you think, I've my personal speculation for like the NX, because it seems like all the speculation seems to revolve around, it maybe going into a combined portable home console unified operating system. My personal dream is that they would, we've gone from carts to discs. My hope is we're going to go back to carts.
That's
a 32 gig, 64 gig.
That's what I've heard. The rumors are like that the rumor docs that leaked. Like some guy on the plane next to me to E3 was saying that it's going to move back to carts. We've been told nothing because like our relationship with Nintendo extends to like having a Wii U dev kit and like being in the Wii U program. But like I've looked on their site, I can't find anything about NX. Like it's so secret right now that it's not being shared with anybody. But yeah, I'm crossing my fingers on carts too. Like if carts come back, that would be amazing. There's just something more personal about owning a cart than a digital game. I remember stories for all of my cartridge games. I can tell you a story about almost any physical game you pull out, but if I'm flipping through my digital list on Xbox, I'm like, oh, maybe I bought that on a sale. Like, yeah. That's my memory of that. But like, I get a cart. I remember buying it at the store. I remember taking it home. I remember ripping the wrap off, looking through the manual. Like, I remember some significant event in my life that was happening when I got that game.
I remember someone that we talked to at MagFest said, he explained to his grandma who was like, why do you have all these things still? And he said, this is my photo album. I remember things. I remember when this came out, and I remember the other events that surrounded it.
Yeah.
Let me see. I mean, I've got questions I haven't asked, but we've kind of covered so many angles of it. Something that we've discovered as being a primarily retro gaming channel. There's a lot of people, and I'm certainly not one of them. Yes, I love physical copies, but heck, Ace Attorney 6 is announced digital only. I'm not going to boycott that because I freaking want to play Ace Attorney 6. But some people are like, oh, no physical, no sale. Do you think that you think a lot of people are sort of double dipping, or do you think you're reaching a new audience?
With us, we're doing a little bit of both. We've had people on our forums say like they do not buy digital at all. And I think there's quite a few people who are like that, and they're coming to us and buying our releases because they're these weird little downloadable games that otherwise they wouldn't have bought. I don't think it's a huge audience though. I think a lot of the people that are buying our games, keeping them sealed, and then buying them digitally to play. I think that's like a large portion of our audience is double dipping in that way.
It's interesting because so many of those people who don't want to buy digital games are people who, they've maybe got more of an old school mentality, and the irony of all that is indie games in a lot of ways have an old school mentality. Maybe sort of retro with a modern flavor, but it goes back to that simplicity in a lot of ways. And so I think a lot of people are missing out on games that they would enjoy, but you're sort of bringing that to them in a way that they haven't been able to experience before.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it because it's these small games that, in some cases, like Zeo Drifter, there's not a lot of people who own it except like on PlayStation. I think it was a PlayStation Plus, but even then, I have this strong belief that if somebody gets a game for free, they have a lot less attachment to it than if they pay for it. When you pay for a game, you take the time to play it, you give it an honest chance. If you get a free game, you might play it for a minute and then just give up on it. It was free, who cares?
Now, like Zeo Drifter, now that's not the actual release of that, if I'm not mistaken, has been out for a bit. It's been out for a while.
I think it's over a year old.
So, for a project like that, were you like, ooh, I like that game, I'm going to talk to Renegade Kid, or did they come to you guys and be like, we really want to make a physical copy?
So it's weird. That particular deal came out of us knowing people at Gambitious, which was the publisher of Zeo Drifter. We had worked with Gambitious on Breach and Clear Deadline, and when we put out the Breach and Clear cartridge, they immediately reached out and were like, hey, do you think you can do something with these games? And they were like, Zeo Drifter is the first one they wanted to do. And Gambitious, by extension, is also part of Devolver. So Devolver wanted to kind of use that as like, do people actually want your products? Now Zero Drifter is sold out. They've seen that. But what's crazy is that Jules Watson from Renegade Kid actually like called me on the phone, like sent me an email, called me on the phone, talked to me like before we had even put Breach and Clear on sale, because he wanted to kind of investigate what we were doing because he's a big fan of physical media. So I feel like even if I hadn't known Gambitious, I probably would have been able to go to him and kind of start a relationship there. But he was looking to more do something on the Nintendo side because that's kind of Renegade Kid's bread and butter. They're very Nintendo focused, but worked out.
Do you think there's something inherently? Do you think it's more fun to pull a game off your shelf and put it in the system, or is that totally superficial versus selecting it from a list?
I mean, I think it adds a little bit of physicality to it. You have to get up, you have to select the game, put it in. It kind of makes it more of like, I don't know if an experience is the right way to say it, because it's not.
Someone we talked to recently said it's an intentional act.
Yeah.
It's not just like, I'll do this. It's a very intentional act.
Yeah.
You take the game more seriously because you have made this intentional decision.
It's the same thing what I was saying. If you get a game for free versus paying for it, you've made a decision to buy that game. You've made a decision to put that game in your console. You're probably going to take the time to actually play it and experience it. I think that's one of the reasons people are going back to vinyl and they like vinyl is they're taking the effort to put the disc in the record player and they're just going to sit there and listen to the music and experience the music rather than on Spotify, you might load up a song, put in your headphones, and then do something else, or just put it on in the background and not really experience the music. I think it kind of makes it more of a thing to enjoy.
So something we were talking about earlier, your games don't have ESRB ratings on the box. That's, it's kind of nice to not have that marring the cover.
And that's kind of also, I was going to mention that when we were talking about other platforms. I feel like that would be a hurdle for Microsoft or Nintendo. I have no confirmation on it because I've never asked, but Sony has been very, very keen on working with us on that because a physical ESRB rating, a rating on a box product, costs a lot of money. And that would cut into the amount of money that we can make back for developers. And the thing about ESRB ratings is they're not a legal thing. It's not like the game has to display this. Like I'm pretty sure movies might have to display. I don't know. But games do not have to display them. It's a retailer requirement. It's GameStop saying, we have to have this rating on there because we don't want a parent to come in and buy a game and sue us when it's not appropriate for her kid. So retailers like GameStop, Walmart, Amazon, all those places require that rating, but we're selling direct to customer. I'm making the rules on what I require, and I don't require a rating, so Sony's legal department has been fine with it. As long as the game has been digitally rated and they know that they're not putting adult content on a disc or whatever, they're not putting out XXX games, they're happy. They're allowing us to do it, and that has been incredibly beneficial because there's some games where that physical ESRB rating would cut away with like more than a fourth of the amount of profit that a developer might get. So that's significant.
That's awesome. Let me think. Where's it going next? Let's say there were no hurdles or difficulty getting something to publish. What would be your dream pick for limited run to publish?
I feel like Douglas is going to say the exact same thing that I'm going to say. It's Yakuza 5. So there's two categories here. There's games that have not been released in the West, and that would be Phantasy Star Online 2. If I could make that happen and have it be in English, that's my dream game right there. If it was a game that has been released in the West but isn't on a disc, it's Yakuza 5.
One more thing. Any sneak previews for the future that you can get?
I have to maintain silence. I don't think I have anybody that was like, yeah, just talk about it openly.
Can you give us any hints as to how many we're up to? What you just released, like number 13, 14?
So Soldner is 13. Breach and Clear Deadline is 14. 15 and 16 are Rainbow Moon. And then 17 is going to be on August 19th with Rainbow Moon, but I'm not going to say what that one is. It's from a big developer. It's an important game that is a remaster of a game that came out the last generation. So I can say that much, but I'm not going to spoil what it is, and I can't say it. They'll probably announce it sometime in the next 2 weeks. So maybe by the time you have this posted, it might have already been announced. Then people are like, oh, that's what he's talking about.
How many more numbers beyond that do you have confirmed? I mean, you might not know what number they're going to be at this point, but
well, I know that I have
confirmed internally. I mean,
so I'll say manufacturing. We have up to 21 releases already being manufactured. That's the number, limited run number 21. So that's 8 more from where we're at right now. I already have those in manufacturing, ready to go. Those are slated for release, and those will be good when they're here and on sale. We've signed and have contracts out to probably over 40 different games.
It's crazy. This is in much less than a year. Like, this is incredible.
And I think I actually just got back signed contracts for 2 games that people are going to be insanely excited about. Like, it's going to be a frenzy, and you specifically are going to get very excited about them.
Oh, I mean, this is just crazy that all this has happened in a year.
Not even a year.
You guys look pretty healthy. I mean, are you running yourselves ragged?
Yes. I mean, I feel really like every day I get into work saying I'm going to get all this stuff done, and then I don't get it done because I get like an email from a new developer, I get a bunch of customer complaints, or I get like distracted with something that happens on Twitter or some weird manufacturing thing I have to do. Like I'm kind of like torn between so many things, but like we've made our margins so good for the developer that we're not like making enough money to say like, let me go hire 5 more people to run this stuff. Like we have to keep it light. It still has to be me and Douglas on the limited run side, because if we extend beyond that, like we could stretch into that, but then we don't have all this extra money to do manufacturing, because we've constantly got several $100,000 tied up with Sony, which means that whenever a limited run finishes and all that money is back to us, we'll be in a good spot. But right now we're just like running around everywhere, doing everything together and kind of like stretching our resources thin to get all this stuff done.
But I mean, so far, very successful. And what about the question about the limited? Like, will you ever have to like publish, make a more? Or did he cover it?
Well, I think you sort of covered in some things that you talked about before. Would you ever? It sounds like this. You talked about the balance. Like, what's the threshold that you can cross over before people are like, that's not rare. I don't really care.
So we finally figured out the metric that we can use to determine, how we need to grow. And we're looking at month over month growth in recurrent customers who are coming back and they've bought more than one release. Like when we look at those growths, those are the customers we care about. Those are the ones we know that are going to keep coming back. And we can look at that to kind of get a baseline and say, like, let's do 10% over that. And that's kind of what we have to look at. And right now we're seeing around 2,300. So and we sell an average, like if we have a game available and people can buy 2 copies of it, sell an average of about 1.5. So we can use that as kind of a metric, a basis to say, we can probably put out a game with 3,000 copies, 3,200 like Soldner, and let people buy 2. And that will probably sell in about 24 hours. That's my prediction for how long that's going to last, because we actually looked at data, we looked at all of our past purchases, and we said this is where that should be. So we're going to kind of do that going forward. So as our customer base grows, you'll see those smaller runs expand. You might see something like Xeodrifter come out next year, and now instead of being 2,300 copies like Xeodrifter, it can be 3,500 because we've grown. Our recurrent customers have gotten bigger. So that's like our focus right now, is growing our following so that we can kind of get bigger runs and facilitate them.
So I mean, so far it sounds like it's working out. It sounds like it sounds like your model is just kind of clicking together really well. Do you foresee it being sustainable for a long time? I mean, it just seems like it's working.
I mean, the big worry that I have is that we might saturate the market at some point. We have so many developers coming to us with awesome games that we don't want to say no, because I want to preserve these games. I want these games on my shelf. I'm not going to turn them away. So we're just trying to figure out ways to like how do we fit all this stuff in 1 month or this next month or whatever? Like scheduling has been crazy. So we're just trying not to overwhelm people. And we don't want to hit a point where there's so many releases that people stop caring. That people are like, I can't collect all of them. You're going out too fast. We're just trying to play it safe there, because one of the things I was reading about, and this might sound weird, is I read a very good book about Beanie Babies, about the Beanie Baby craze. One of the big things that killed Beanie Babies, and granted, I understand games have significantly more intrinsic value than little beanbag animals. So like they're definitely not one-to-one, but one of the reasons people stopped caring about Beanie Babies was towards the end they were releasing like 70 Beanie Babies at a time. One go, here's 70, and like half of them you don't care about. And like somebody who's collecting all of them, how are they going to justify going out and spending $350 in one fell swoop on these Beanie Babies? And like even just to get them all, they have to go to all these different stores. It's too much effort. It's too much time. And then they finally said, "Well, screw it. I'm out. I'm cashing out my collection."
One of our friends, you know, he gave up on Amiibo not too that long ago because it's like you lost the war at some point if you ended up not getting some, so you just quit trying.
Like Gold Mario or whatever, like one of the ones that was like never reprinted. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And at the same note, they're putting out so many now. It's like, here's a whole bunch of Animal Crossing characters you don't even care about. Like I have Amiibo right here. Some of the Animal Crossing ones and Kirby ones. Like all my Smash Amiibo are in the other room, and I've bought every single Amiibo that's come out. I don't know why. I just keep buying them, but I don't want half the Animal Crossing ones. I don't even know who Dottie is. I don't know who that character is, but I have an Amiibo of Dottie. I don't know why. But there's going to be a point where these Amiibo are coming out. I'm going to finally say, screw this. I don't know. Like, I really don't know who that character is. I really don't want it.
So last question I can think of, unless Corey has a thing. You know, obviously you're very busy, but do you find much time to just enjoy and appreciate games yourself today?
I still play lots of games. Most of it's been on my Vita. I have a 1-year-old daughter at home, so when I get home, I spend time with her. I don't play games there, and then by the time I'm done, put her to bed, I'm exhausted, so I go like lay down and play Vita or DS. Most of my time is there, but I will play console games. Like I just played Uncharted 4. I played something else on PS4 recently. I play a lot.
That's good.
I just played through Zero Time Dilemma on Vita and loved every minute of it. Played it for 22 hours, I think. It was pretty brisk, so.
See, that was one thing that kept me out of game development. I'm like, gosh, these people work so much that they don't ever play games. I want to play games. Of course, now I'm making a YouTube show about games, and I can't play games. So. But anything?
No, I think that's great.
You did awesome. Like that's like Corey's gonna have a hard time cutting that down.
Yeah,
too much stuff.